There's a message in what I'm trying to give to you. There is a message. Whether I get it out exactly as I planned can be debated. But that's why I had to ask Father to take part, because there's some things, there's some definite things that I see. And it's not all pretty. It's not it's not a scary thing, because we live it. But I want to tell you what I see so that you can also make a better decision, an informed decision on the things that you see far as what is righteousness, what is our belief, what is our walk, what are these things that we claim? As well, what is it concerning our environment, our government, our educational system? All of these things affect us as a people, because we raise our children and we live within a political government that run and govern this country as well as the world, which are run by governments. And so as we look, I want to do my best to show you what I see. So today, as we begin, how to be an effective witness 5, as we have gone through 4 different times already, and today I'm going to continue. And so as we continue, I will do my best to bring out those points that I think are very important. And as we've done this before, Midrash with me for a second. Who is the bread of life?
Yeshua.
Who said, if you love me,
you will keep my commandments.
He also said, there is a way
that seems right to a man,
but the end is destruction, death. And so Yahweh also says, not by might nor by power. So in our attempt to identify the characteristics of what we have received was, each of us have grown up, our parents, their parents, have grown up in a society and tradition of going to church. And what I've been seeing is that maybe there's a question there as to what we really need to be doing, because the scripture tells us that there's a way that seems right, but it ends in death. And so our attempt has been to find the way that seems right. Now that can be a task by itself, because to find the way that seems right, what if you're in the way that seems right? And you're trying to find the way that seems right. Because what you're really looking for, what we're looking for, is the way that is right. And so by the process of elimination, we can make sure that we're not just in some way that seems right. So this will be our task as we move through. So part of our instructions in Matthew, Yeshua said in the 7th chapter, 13 verse through 14, enter in through the gate, the narrow gate, because the way is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter in through it, because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life. And there are few who find it. And so, as we've already taken a look at this previously, the first thing we need to know is that this way that seems right, everybody follows it. Everybody's on that track. Or that is the wide road, because everybody is going that way. But it's not necessarily the right decision. Because if everybody, and when I say everybody, we're not using 100%. We're saying majorities, we're saying a good amount are traveling that road. And so if that road doesn't lead us to the place we need to be, then it does lead us to destruction. And that's what we're looking for. And so now, Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. Then Yeshua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. After having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the trier came and said to him, "If you are the Son of Elohim, command these stones become bread." But he answering said, It has been written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. Here, I think, as we begin to analyze what Yeshua spoke to us, we know that the background here is when he started his ministry. This is right after he was mikvahd or baptized by Yochanan or John, and he was identified, in other words. Now that Yeshua has been identified and he is now starting his ministry, the first thing happened is he was led up. And if I remember correctly, Minister Cece, I think we had a midrash, you had asked a question about this or brought a point up on this. So I thought I would follow up with this, that, I know it was someone. After having fasted for 40 days, remember he was up in the mountain 40 days, 40 nights. It says that he was hungry. But the question came up, who was he led by? It says the Spirit. And there's nothing else there just yet. So we're just going to leave it at the Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. So either Hasatan led him there, or the Holy Spirit led him there. Because we know whom he had to meet in the wilderness was Hasatan. And we know his condition was, he was hungry. He just did 40 days with no food. He's hungry at this time. So can we surmise that even before we know who led him, we know that he's hungry, and Hasatan will attack you at your moment of weakness.
Yes.
At your moment of desire, he will come to present himself as a beacon of light. So in your time of weakness is when he comes. And so it says in the 3rd verse, the trier came. So here, I would say that these are two parts here. He was led into the wilderness. And then it says, the trier came. So I gather that he was led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness. It can be debated, but for my purposes here today, I want to just stick with what I see. And what I see is that the trier came after he was led there. And so it says, and the trier, or the tempter, or the deceiver, adversary, however you wish to name him, said to him, if you are the Son of Elohim, command these stones become bread. Now, what he did was really awesome, and Hasatan really didn't understand what he was doing. But what he was doing was trying to trap Yeshua if he was the Son of God. But what he has to do now is identify him so that he can perform his deception. And in performing his deception, he felt that he would win. Because basically, as we know in the Hebrew, bread is bread of fellowship. So we know that if Yeshua turns it into bread, that he takes part and he becomes in fellowship with Yeshua. Therefore, he cannot go against him because he's my brother. But I see something a little deeper here. All things working together for the good of those who are called according to the purpose of Yahweh. I see something here working. He's calling for the stone to become bread. And Yeshua, as he dialogued with him in Matthew chapter 7 on this, he says, man shall not live by bread alone. And I believe I have it here as well. And so he's saying, turn these stones into bread. Right. And in the wilderness, Yahweh calls Israel stiff-neck, stone. And so they had the Torah written on tablets of stone, which also represented their stony hearts. Right. And so what Hasatan didn't realize, and I'll continue with what Yeshua, his dialogue. He says, what man of you, if his son asked him for bread, he would give him a snake, a serpent? If the wicked one gives good gifts, then what do you think about the righteous one? Yes. And so what he was asking was for Yeshua, if you are the Son, turn these stones into bread. And right here as well, but the answer, he said, it has been written, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that comes out of the mouth of Yahweh. So now to turn these stones into bread, he's already asking of the Father, because in Matthew chapter 7, he says, you shall worship Yahweh alone. And I thought it strange that he's telling Hasatan, you shall worship Yahweh alone. And so while Hasatan is also a creation of Yahweh, he's testing him, because now I want you to prove to me that you are the Son, because I know who the Father is. And so would the Father give his Son a snake if he asks for bread? And so here's the snake asking for bread. And he says, turn the stone into bread. And we were the stones that he was asking to be turned into bread. Had no clue of what he really asked, because he was really talking to the Father. What father would give his son a snake? So as he granted his request, he did turn the stone into bread. I guess it's a good place right here. Why don't somebody say, eat the bread? Eat the bread. Come on, eat the bread. Eat the bread. So as we look at this and continue to examine what really took place here, Yeshua granted him, because he said, you shall worship the Father alone, him. He's turning the stone into bread. Now, to further explain that, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh, going back to Deuteronomy, and we'll look at that in just a second, chapter 8. But let me interpret that. If Yeshua is the bread of life, he is also saying, man shall not live by Yeshua alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. And so here we have a full translation of what the deepness of what Yeshua did on the mountain. And as we continue, I want to take it back to the commandment, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. God to do every command which I command you today, that you might what? Live, and shall what? Increase, and go in, and shall possess the land of which Yahweh swore to your fathers, and shall remember that Yahweh, your Elohim, led you all these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. And he humbled you and let you what? Suffer hunger. Yeshua was hungry. And he humbled you to let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna bread, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. Yeshua just simply quoted the word that was already there. He didn't give anything new. He just went right back to the Torah. And so while we continue to examine this stone, then the devil took him up into the set apart city, set him on the edge of the set apart place, and said to him, if, still the question, if you are the son of Elohim, throw yourself down, for it has been written, he shall command his messengers concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot against a stone. Yeshua said to him, it has also been written, you shall not try Yahweh, your Elohim. So let me interpret this stone. He's saying something here that is very special, because Hasatan is really pushing him. And now notice that he has now taken him from the place where he was led by the Holy Spirit. Now we see him really being taken by Hasatan to another place. So this is where we can ascertain that this is where he himself, Hasatan, led Yeshua to a high mountain. Because it says, then the devil took him up into the set-apart city and set him on the edge of the set-apart place. And we know it was a mountain. And so now he's tempting him again with the word. And he says that the messengers was commanded concerning you, if you are the son, that you would not even dash your foot against a stone, that you would be bared up. If you were to fall, you would be bared up. In their hands they shall bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot against the stone. Now, I want to really look at this. To help me out, I went to the concordance, and of course the Greek concordance for this one. We're looking at the word dash. There's definition: to strike against, of those strike against a stone, of those who strike against a stone, or other obstacles in the path, to stumble. another, to strike one's foot against a stone, or to meet someone, to meet some with harm, to rush upon, to beat against, to be made to stumble by a thing. Metaphorically, to be induced to sin. The scriptures has already proclaimed that if you are the son of God, Elohim, Yahweh, if you were to cast yourself off of this mountain, that you wouldn't even dash your foot against the stone. Now, back in the wilderness, and we're going to midrash on this a little later, Yahweh said something to Israel. He said, you know what? I'm just really, I've seen these people. You are a stiff-necked people. And if I shall go one moment in your midst, I shall consume you. And so for him to be with Israel, Israel will die. And so Moshe built the temple, took his tent and took it outside the camp. Far outside the camp. So when someone needed to speak a word from Yahweh, they had to go far outside the camp. Because that's where Yahweh was. Only meeting with Moshe and Yehoshua. And so as we examine what he said, even at this point, if he strikes the stone, they would die. So even when he comes back as man, if he stays in their midst, he may get mad enough to strike the stone. And so where it says to rush upon, to beat against the stone, to be made to stumble by a thing, or to even be induced to sin. Yeshua even had a chance to sin. But when he laid down his life, he never sinned. So therefore, he had to be away from those who are prone to sin because of their stony hearts. They rejected the Torah. They rejected him. And so his anger was still such that if I'm in your midst, it's possible that your life will end. So even returning, he had to be only there for a short time. And as we continue, we will continue to look at this. And again, the devil took him up on a very high mountain and showed him all of the reigns of the world and their esteems, and said to him, all these I shall give you if you fall down and worship me. Then Yeshua said to him, go, Satan, for it has been written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him alone you shall what? Serve. Then the devil left him, and see, messengers came and attended him. It has been written that if you are the son of Elohim, the messengers would come and bear you up, so that you would not even dash your foot against the stone. We are the stone. And so Yeshua did not honor Hasatan by saying, okay, I will be the son, but what he did was identified himself as the father. In this exchange, because the question was, if you're the son, then do this, then do this. That way you can prove to me that you're the son. But bottom line, what I want you to really do, bow down and worship me. Let's take away all the trickery. Let's get rid of, let's just get down, all right. I shall give you all of these if you fall down and worship me. What? All of the kingdoms of the earth is what King James would say. But today we see them as empires. So what he showed him was your Walmarts, your Kmarts, your all the marts, and all of the corporate bigwigs, and all of the entities that makes plenty of money, and they have plenty of people who work for them, and they divvy out the monies to whom they desire, making whom they want rise in esteem when they want. Music industry. So in other words, Hasatan did not only show this to Yeshua, but he showed it to some other people as well. And the others said, yes, I'll have my slice of the pie. And so there's many who fell for the glitz and glitter of Hollywood, the glamour of corporate entities, the glamour of political hype. Whatever your cup of tea was, he had it. Now he showed it to Yeshua. He wanted Yeshua to have this, because if he knew that Yeshua received it from him, he would now achieve his ultimate goal. His ultimate goal was, I shall ascend the heavens and place my throne above yours. And so that was the ultimate goal. But Yeshua told him, you shall serve Yahweh, Yahweh alone. And so as he commented here in the third bullet, it says, then Yeshua said to him, go, Satan, for it has been written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him alone you serve. And so now he gave a simple command, told him to what? Go. What did he do? He left. And so now let's kind of look at Matthew chapter 7 to kind of put this in perspective as well. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall he give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, Hasatan, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask him? And so now Yeshua is turning this back around, and notice that in both exchanges he asks, shall give him a stone or shall give him a snake. And so in this we see that Hasatan is the trier who is the snake, but he is also a son of Elohim. And so he gave him what he asked for, turning the stone into bread. And there's a reason for that as we continue to go.
Hallelujah.
The Father and Son are definitely one. We're going to look at Exodus chapter 33 and a few verses between, from chapter 33 through verses 11. But I have them kind of, there's one or two that are not here. So it's not all here, but just to try to get everything here so that I might present this. And I think you'll get the understanding of what I'm trying to bring forward here. Verse 1, Exodus 33, verse 1. And Yeshua and Yahweh said to Moshe, go up from there, you and the people whom you have brought out of the land of Israel, and I shall send my messenger before you to the land flowing with milk and honey, for I do not go up in your midst, because you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you on the way. Verses 5 through 7. And Yahweh said to Moshe, say to the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. Should I go up in your midst for one moment? I shall consume you. And now take off your ornaments, and I shall know what to do with you. Right here in this exchange, Yahweh has already told Israel that they were the stiff-necked, stony hearts. This is at Mount Sinai. They are now in that 50-day range, and it is after that. He's gone back up. He was gone for 40 days. They made the golden calf. Yahweh was very angry with them after everything you've seen me do for you. And you go now and build a golden calf where you blame it on Aharon, and he says a calf jumped out. He just simply threw the gold into the fire. So there's some issues going on here. But listen to how Yahweh handles it while he's speaking now to Moshe. He hasn't even gone back down yet. And so as he says, this is what I want you to say to him. Because see, I've already said it to him. You're a stiff neck. He's rubbing it in. Now he's telling Moshe, you go say what I said. And they'll do exactly what you want them to do. Because what he wants them to do is to take off their ornaments.
Right.
And so when he goes and says that to them, the next bullet, so the children of Israel took off their ornaments at Mount Horeb. And Moshe took his tent and pitched it outside the camp, far from the camp, and called it the tent of meeting. And it came to be that everyone who sought Yahweh went out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. And so now they're ashamed of themselves and the specialties that Yahweh gave them that set them even more apart as to who they were. Take it off. Take it off. Whatever insignias I gave you, take it off. Anything that I used to dress you up, whether it's the priesthood or whatever I said, take it off and just leave it. And so because they now hear the very words that Moshe said, they know that Yahweh said it because he said the same thing. You are a stiff-necked people. He's telling them, your stony hearts. But don't forget what's going to happen to the stone, because it's going to be turned into bread. And so now as we continue, let's take a look. And I think what we will see here is the characteristics of who is who. Verse 9. When Moshe entered in the tent, that the column of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tent, And he spoke with Moshe. Who spoke with Moshe? Yahweh. In the column of cloud, he descended and spoke at the doorway. And he spoke with Moshe. And all the people saw the column of cloud. And standing at the tent door, and all the people rose and bowed themselves, each one at the door of his tent. They saw Moshe, and they saw the cloud come down. And they saw the cloud standing at the tent where Moshe lived, and took it out of the camp. And every man and every woman and child, when Moshe went toward his tent, guess what they did? They all stood and watched him till he got all the way far away. Wherever he went, they kept their eyes on him. And they saw him as he went to the tent. And the cloud came down, but only when Moshe went to the tent. And so they saw the cloud standing as a man, and I'll continue to read. Verse 11. Thus Yahweh spoke to Moshe face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. And he would not return to the camp. And he would return to the camp, but his servant, Yehoshua, son of Nun, nobody's son, Yehoshua, a young man, did not leave the tent. So Yahweh stood there and spoke with Moshe. And Yehoshua, who was also with him, stayed even when Moshe left. And so Yahweh also spoke to Yehoshua, who was there. And so it has been written that Yahweh, no man sees his face, lest he die. But we see clearly here that he spoke to Moshe face to face. So who really spoke to Moshe? Now, I remind you that there's this cloud that came down. And remember that Yahweh said, now take off your ornaments while I go think what I'm going to do with you. So Yahweh is angry. But now that he's moved with anger, I need to go and be by myself so I can think about what I'm going to do with you. But he said also, I'm going to send my messenger. Let's look at Acts chapter 7, verse 30 through 35. Verse 30. And after 40 years were completed, a messenger of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame of fire in the bush, in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb is the same place, just two different names. Verse 31. And Moshe, seeing it, marveled at the sight, and coming near to look, the voice of Yahweh came to him. What came to him? The voice of who? Yahweh. Who was in the bush? A messenger of Yahweh appeared to him. Verse 32. Saying, I am the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yishak, and the Elohim of Yaakov. And Moshe trembled and did not have the courage to look. I have certainly seen the evil treatment of my people who are in Mizraim, Egypt, and I have heard their groanings and have come down to deliver them. And now come, let me send you to Mitzrayim. So this Moshe whom they had refused, saying, who made you a ruler and a judge? This one Elohim sent to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the messenger who appeared to him in the bush. So who was in the bush? The messenger. When the messenger in the bush spoke, it was the voice of Yahweh. When Moshe was led and said that he would lead Israel, he said, by the hand of the messenger. The same messenger by whom he said when he was very angry with them, if I stay in your midst, even for 1 moment, I shall consume you. And so now he comes as a man. And because it's before his time, he comes in a column of a cloud. Because they can't know who he is yet. Because they still need to do some things going through the process. And so as this process, we can take a look at Brit Hadashah or New Testament, Acts chapter 7. Look back at Exodus chapter 33. And understand that Yahweh was so angry with Israel, he had said, I will not go with you. And look what the man Moshe did. He pleaded with Yahweh, if you don't go, we can't go, Yahweh. And so as he pleaded with Yahweh, he said, I'll go. He just didn't tell him how he was going to go. So he sent the cloud. And if memory serves me correct, all the earth is looking for Yeshua to return. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And all the earth shall see him. The earth shall be dark. And he shall appear in a cloud. So I submit to you that the messenger who was in the column of a cloud, who was in the bush, is the same messenger that we shall receive. And the reason he came as a messenger in the column of the cloud, who was in the bush, as a man who speaks face to face, who did Moshe really see? Yahweh face to face or Yeshua face to face? He saw Yeshua face to face. Because no man looks upon his face and live. Hallelujah. So now that we have a lot of the foundation out of the way, in other words, these people are the same people that he returns to. He just couldn't be out there with you outside the camp. Outside the camp. Because you were stone-hearted. And if I stay with you outside or inside the camp, I would kill you. So you stay with your sinful self far from me. But I'll be with you. It's like a parent. It's like what a parent does. A parent. And I did this some years ago. My children may remember this, and I'm sure they do. They were in the car as children do, you know, they're fighting as sisters and brothers, you know, they're fighting in the car, and you know, you just get mad and angry, and you try to figure out what can you do to get these children to stop fighting. And you know, we were, I think New York then, Washington D.C. And so as we were going down the street, I looked and saw the courthouse, and I pulled over. This was a Friday afternoon, and I said, get out. Get out. There is a bus stop right there. You sit there until the courts open up. Y'all go inside, and y'all go ahead and give them your argument, and you get it solved. I'll be back for you. They won't open up until Monday. So y'all just sit right here. Now, Rabbi 2 was a little older, so he kind of knew. He had to comfort his little sister. She was just torn up. So as he was trying to comfort her, he knew that we would be back sometime relatively soon. He was probably about 10, and so she would have been about 14, and now you just 7 years. So he knew enough to know that we was going to come back. But little sister was just torn up. And she didn't know what she was going to do because my daddy done put us out the car and told us to wait till the courthouse opened. And so you know that I love my children and I wasn't going to leave them there, but I needed to teach them a lesson. So Yahweh said, if my beings stay with you, I will kill you. He knew already. He had a plan already. He knew that he was going to come and speak to Moshe face to face as a man. And that's exactly what he did. And so while we kind of consider all that, let's look and see what happened. While my topic has really been how to be an effective witness, I'm giving you a lot of background information so that you know, so when you present the easy things, you've already got your background knowledge. You don't even need to speak about it. It's that you know, so no matter what they say, no matter what their answer is, you are satisfied within yourself that either you take it or you leave it. I'm going on to the next. You will not be perplexed whether I did a good enough job, did I give them the right message or not. But what is happening, there's a transition that is happening to the stones that were in the wilderness that now go into the nations. But then the stone that is in the nations now will wake up at a point and become bread. How? Because they would hear a message, and at some point they would return and eat the bread. Someone will mention Leviticus 23. Either they will receive it or they will reject it. But at the moment they receive it and they eat the bread of life, you are what you eat. At the moment they trust and they believe and they give over to the desire of Yahweh, they will eat the bread and become what they eat. And so while I'm looking at this system that seems right, and so now I'm going to start moving kind of fast and looking at some images of what we have so far. And here we have the religions of the world, and we've gone through this already. Here we have Christianity in the purple, and we can already see that it is the wide road. It is not a question whether or not it is the wide road. So we have already concluded that Christianity is not what it appears to be, at least in theory, as we continue. Because by deduction, it is the wide road. All other religions here, Islam, green. We have Judah in the blue. You can't even see it. You have Hindu, red, Buddhism in the bronze or brown. Then Chinese religions, a little more bronze. Then the tribal religions, black, and so on. So the yellow, other religions. So by just looking at the map, we can kind of see and conclude that Christianity is a wide road. And the scripture doesn't point to it. It says there's a way that seems right. And so by reasonable deduction, we're trying to figure out, is Christianity right or not? So let's look at the stolen authority once again. The word Catholic is derived from the Greek word, here, which means universal. Catholic was first used to describe the Christian church in the early 2nd century. The first known use of the phrase, the Catholic Church, occurred in the letter from St. Ignatius to Smyrnians about 110 AD in the catechetical discourse of St. Cyril of Jerusalem. All right, now, what I just read is from their site. They say they were chosen. I was just merely reading. So I'm not saying that they were the first known of the phrase in Antiochus. No, that's what they claim. But then too, we can see the timeline going back to 110 AD, knowing that Israel itself were scattered in 70 AD. 40 years later, there's somebody taking their place. Now Israel was scattered. Now we have someone popping up saying, we're Israel. Paganism. So now let's start looking at where paganism has come from. Paganism represents a wide variety of traditions that emphasizes reverence of nature and a revival of the ancient polytheistic and animalistic religions or practices. Some modern forms of paganism have their roots in 19th century Common Era European nationalism, which includes Britain or the Order of the Druids. But most contemporary pagan groups trace their immediate organizational roots to the 1960s. Monotheism is almost universally rejected within paganism. Let me point to that once again. Monotheism, one God, is rejected by pagan practitioners. That's what it's saying. And most pagan traditions are practically interested in the revival of ancient polytheistic religions or religious traditions, including the Norse or North Europe and Celtic, which is Britain traditions. Many pagan traditions are intentionally reconstructionist in that they aim to revive many of the lost rituals of the ancient traditions, including the holy days and seasonal celebrations. Besides nature, many pagans also worship a variety of gods and goddesses, including spirits which can represent national and local heroes, as well as deceased family members. And I have a website there, Pantheon website. Now, that is the pagan website. I went to a pagan website and I studied them. I've been studying them for a little bit now since I've been teaching this. And so now to start bringing this in, I want you to see some of the things that I see in pagan, and those who say they are pagan, those who create their awareness of pagan idolatry, and that's what they do. And so as we look at the characteristics, let's see if we see any similarities or anything that is familiar. Let's see what they look at as afterlife or life after death. Most pagans would regard the concept such as salvation and justification as meaningless. This is the concept of pagan traditions. Salvation is meaningless to their spiritual path with no transcendent deity who acts as judge and no concept of sin. Logically, no need for salvation or atonement exists. This is pagan worship. The concept, there's no sin, in other words. There is no sin. They live by nature. They feel that we are one with nature, or they are one with nature, and they have certain things that they honor, worship, and it comes out in their rituals. So, and notice who this were, the Norse, or Northern, or Europe itself, Britain, the Celtics. So in this, now I look back at, I looked at something to start looking at history and seeing what just happened, what happened. And so I started looking at imperialism. I went back to, this particular one is 1914. A policy of, and I'm giving the definition of imperialism, a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. Not by power, not by might. So, in looking at this, this is a map of the world, the different nations, the 7 continents. If you look at the different colors, you have United Kingdom, France, Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, United States, Russia, Italy, Germany, and Turkey. Those places that are the light gray are not represented by the European nations. Now, I should also tell you that these are the Christian nations that have come together to extend their power throughout the world. And we'll see as to how they came together, but this is kind of late into their efforts. But if you notice the year 1914, that is also right around World War I, so they couldn't agree. You got the gold, I want the gold. You got the diamonds, I want the diamonds. They couldn't always agree on everything. So, but just look at, here is Africa. And every color here is represented. So I'll continue because I have a better look at Africa. Here is Africa once again. So this is now a map from 1913. The colonies or the empires that were divvied up to the Christian nations. And if you look at the peak, that would all be the British colonies or empires. Looking at the next one, I guess purple or deep blue, purple would be France, and then we have the green, Germany, the blood red, Portugal, kind of brass, Spain, and the red represents Belgium, the yellow represents Italy, and another portion, again, Morocco, green, which is Germany. And so here was a meeting that I found in the year 1884 through 85. There was a meeting that took place in Germany, Berlin. And when they came together in Berlin, they had the Conference of Africa. And this conference was to discuss Which part do you want? I thought there were some people there already. They were not invited to the meeting. So if you see my image on the right-hand side, it is a depiction of the artists. It's a depiction of the artists of those who were there, European nations, who we've already went through, discussing which part of Africa you will settle. And if you see here, it's very hard to see, but this is a 16-foot map of Africa on the wall. And they are now discussing and trying their best to agree on what part you will take. Now, how did they get this information? They've already sent explorers into the land of Ham, as the scriptures call it. They have mapped out the land, and they've sent missionaries to spread the Christian belief. And as the missionaries did the work as scouts and lookouts, when they came, they told them who to take. Now, notice the year, 1884. This is only one of the meetings. There were others. They actually went in 1500. So from 1500 to 1960 is the year of colonization of Africa. And when I looked at 1500 to 1960, that was the year I was born. And so they had been in Africa at that point for 460 years already. And so they're now only discussing what we're going to take and now divvy up by the time it got to 1960. And so they had another World War II, because there were some people who got a little bit too greedy. Hitler got a little greedy. And so we had the World War because they couldn't agree on what belongs to who. And so they still had the idea of European expansion. So here we see Hitler. We have the idea of Africa being a gold mine, literally, a place that would set our economic life in order. And so I don't need to tell you, but for the year 1500, as they went in, they used their weaponry against the Africans or those who were native of the land. And so as they used their cannons, their bombs, their guns, the Africans used swords and spears and arrows, because that's what they knew. That's what they had. So I don't need to tell you who won the battle. So what they did is enslave the whole continent by each country that represented whatever landmass. They went in and did whatever they needed to do to subdue the people. And as I looked at some of the images, there were women who had their hands chopped off or their foot chopped off. Men had feet chopped off, both arms chopped. You know, it's kind of crazy. But what they did was to make the others submit. I saw one man, instead of cutting off his hand, they just went to the middle of his arm, his forearm, and just put a hole straight through it. And I mean, you can hold it up and see the other side, looking through his arm. And so when they saw these things, they did this publicly. So they beat them down till they would submit. Only 2 nations really survived by not they were not defeated. But they finally did throw down their arms and allow them to come in. Ethiopia and one other small one. It was represented, but you can't really even see it. So, in that, when they started leaving in 1960, I wonder why did they all leave out of Africa after being there 460 years, and it only took them 20 years to leave. So each one, either whether they fought or they through diplomacy, whatever it took for them to achieve independence, they achieved independence. Now, there are still some nations that are in there. You have Holland, or Dutch, the apartheid, and you have France, you have Great Britain. You have different ones that still have their claws into them. And really, to be honest, they all do, but I'll show you how. What they did is said, you will now pay an independence tax. France itself gets 14 countries pay taxes to them, to France, that is, for independence. And if they don't pay the tax, they're threatening with sanctions and their guns. We will come in again. So, what is really happening? Let's take a look as I start to come to the conclusion. Here's something that you may recognize, the Star-Spangled Banner. And as you recognize the image on the right-hand side, that would be one of the early flags of the United States. And at this time, that particular one, I found represented 15 colonies, not 13. They were now 15 colonies. And this is the representation. And I thought it was very strange that some of the words of the Star-Spangled Banner would hold. Now, without looking at it, it's a song and you know, it represents this country, even to this day. It's the national anthem of the United States of America. The lyrics came from the defense of Fort McHenry, a poem written in 1814 by a 35-year-old lawyer and amateur poet, Francis Scott Key, after witnessing the bombardment of Fort McHenry by the British ships of the Royal Navy in the Chesapeake Bay during the Battle of Fort McHenry in the War of 1812. Now, the poem was set to the tune of a popular British song by John Stratford Smith and Enoch Society, a men's social club in London. And so this song, the Star-Spangled Banner, the words are written to an original piece that was for Britain, a men's club. And so, while I won't get into too many signs today, I want you to look at, if you can see, the stars, as they have grown to 50 stars now. The stars, if you look at them carefully, it is the 5-pointed star, or the pentagram, or the goat's head. So let's continue and look a little closer at this 5-star. While it's just symbolic here, and I'll just kind of skim through, you have the vowels up here, A, E, I, O, U. Yes, and so what they have, again, I am not familiar with all their symbols and how they work, but I know that there's a deep message that if a pagan see this, he understands its meanings and all the things. So why would we have it on our flag? Okay, so you have water, fire, earth, and water. Did I say air? Air. Okay. Air, fire, earth, and water. spirit. To create or to uncreate. See, smell, taste, touch, hear. There are symbols, while they may serve their purpose for the Druids or pagan worshipers, they have real no bearings on us as a people or a believer. But when you see it, you recognize that there's something here, and we don't. Looking at more of their symbols, there are 8 of what they call their holy days. This is called the will of life. Okay? It's the will of life. And all of their symbols, they have their dates here. I'll just give a couple. October 31st, December 21st. And so what you have here, yes, solstice. You have Halloween. You have summer solstice. So all of the 4, the 2 solstice and the 2 equinox, thank you. So you have all of that represented here, and you have some other images which I won't go through. But here you have the moon. This is a feminine symbol. You have the moon in the middle, covered by on each side. It's something to do with fertility. You have on each side the crescent moon. You have the same thing over here, water, earth, all of that here as well. So all of that make up the 8 holy days of the Wiccans. And so this is what I'm showing you now. This is the witches' tradition. Anyone who studies pagan idolatry, these are their symbols and their will of the year. So certain things happen at certain times. And once again, I won't be able to go into everything. I'm just trying to give you some examples. So as I continue, I want you to keep all of these things as a rolling thought. Because there's more stuff that I'm going to try to bring to you. But looking at the will of the year, that also represented Christmas and Easter. I just didn't go through all the dates there. But those dates are there, and they are pagan dates. And so while Christianity has bought into the pagan dates, they don't know that they are doing pagan traditions as well. And so while I'm trying to bring this to a close, just quickly, sainthood. This is another idiom of the church or the Catholic Church, or a saying. They call people saints, and look how they depict the what they call the Last Supper or the Passover. They have behind each of their heads a moon, and this is how they depict sainthood. And so to kind of move through this, a saint is one who has been recognized for having an exceptional degree of holiness, while the English term saint originated in Christianity. In Orthodox and Catholic teaching, all Christians in heaven are considered to be saints, but some are considered to be worthy of higher honor, emulation, or veneration, with official church recognition given to some saints through colonization or canonization or glorification. So they call their folks saints. I won't go into this too much, but just know I don't call you saints. I didn't know until I started doing this search. Now I understand why. There was just something that just didn't, I knew it sounded like, if this is the church, there's something behind it. There's much more pagan stuff behind this. I'm going to leave it for another time. just to kind of, you know, so you can kind of see where we're going. Once again, the witch's calendar, you can see the dates a little better. Once again, just to point out, December 21st is Yule. Yule is Christmas. This is when they celebrate Christmas. When Yule happens, they have to give 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and then they know the window of Yule has happened, which is the equinox. So then they celebrate starting the 24th at night, Christmas 25th, which is really called Yule. So this goes before the 1900s when they started calling it Christmas. So in order to get the Christians into doing it, they had to try to use what they thought was Christ Mass. And they put it together as Christmas or Christmas. Okay, so what I'm showing you is a lot of hidden things that went on to get people to do pagan rituals. So now this brings me to democracy being an agent of paganism. As I told you last time, that democracy, it is not a good thing. For the people, by the people. It seems right. But look, it says January 26, 2011, published by, I'm not even going to try, American Christians, fundamentalists, are fond of making the claim that democracy is right out of the Bible from the Old Testament, to be precise. You won't find democracy in the Old Testament. That was not the form of government the biblical states of Israel and Yehuda took. You'll find theocracy. You will find kings. You will find a people who sees their God as their king, ruling through his priestly agents here on earth. 1993, they celebrated 2,500 years anniversary of democracy, dating back to the reform in Athens of the, I'm not even going to try it, in 500 ABC, basically Greek. So they've taken different styles of the Greeks and the Romans, put them together, and formed what is now termed democracy, and it seems as though this is the correct way to go, but, and I'm actually going to stop here. I have a little bit more, but I'm going to stop here. It seems correct when you go into a nation and say that we're going to set you up with a democratic society that hinges on the people making decisions and your representative representing the wish or desires of the people. And so as we do this, this is for the people, of the people, by the people. The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And meanwhile, you have slaves. And so as we continue to look at more of these, I want to really appeal to your senses that we've been tricked. We've been deceived. That what we thought was right is not really right. So even in the system of democracy, they have a disdain for theocracy or monotheistic systems, which means one God or one king. And so what they've done is gone into each country and tore down their system. And in their system and in their places, now you're beginning to understand why they were in there so many years. After so many generations, you forget who's king. And so they replace their kingship with democratic societies, saying that, look, we're going to let you work now for us in your land, in your gold mines, and you pay us a tax, and we'll leave your land. And as you pay us a tax, we won't come back with our big machines and kill you. And so you work the cotton, you work the gold mines, you work... See, I thought that was only here in the U.S. I saw images of them working cotton. And so while this is their hook into the continent of Africa, they have now gone into every nation and spread their paganistic democracy that people thought was right. Yeah, we want to get rid of that king, and replaced it with a president or whatever their system is, and you stand up and declare your allegiance to whatever this flag represents. And so while we now are waking up, we're going to start questioning everything. Can we give Yahweh a praise?
Yet not distressed, perplexed, but not in despair, 'cause I